And this is Rose Hall. And what most people don't realize is that this is the proscenium. These are the towers that you saw that I said were on Aircasters that
Yeah.
on the arch here. So it has a full fly tower.
Oh, okay. Wow.
There's,
Okay. Yeah.
there's an interesting story about that, which I'm not sure I'm supposed to tell, but I'm going to tell it anyway.
All right.
The fly tower was insisted upon by Rudy Giuliani. And my understanding was that
to another episode of Nakoto Building Arts. I'm your host, Nakoto, and today I have with me one of the legends in the pro audio industry, none other than Sam Berkow. Sam is the founder of SIA Acoustics, an acoustical and facility design firm based in New York City with a satellite office in Hollywood, California. They provide design insights and planning for musical performance and recording spaces, specializing in providing services for the performing arts, production, broadcast, and architectural communities. Sam also founded SIA Software Company, a small software company that developed the acoustical measurement and sound system optimization software called SIA Smart. Over his illustrious career, Sam has worked on the acoustical design of numerous projects, including the concert venues for the Home of the Jazz at Lincoln Center, the Pearl at the Palms, a 2,600-seat concert venue in Las Vegas. He also worked on the Hollywood Bowl renovation, the Grand Ole Opry, New York's The Jazz Standard, and the Dennis Reese Family Studio at the Clive Davis School at NYU. Lastly, Sam is the recipient of the 2022 Cornell Audio Innovator Award, which recognizes pioneering influential professionals and their contributions in the pro audio world. It gives me great pleasure to welcome Sam Berkow to the podcast. How are you today, Sam?
I'm good. Very nice to be here. I'm happy to join you.
Awesome. Great to have you. So I've had the opportunity to see some of your videos on YouTube. Got a couple of them up there, and recognizing your achievements and discussing some of the projects that you design. And I must say, I'm very impressed. It appears to me that you have had and are continue to have a fulfilling career doing what you love to do. To me, it's also evident to me that your work is more than just a job, but it seemed like to me it's a passion. So my first question for you is, how and when did you discover your passion for the audio and acoustic world? And when did you know that you wanted to make this a career?
Wow. Very nice introduction. And I feel incredibly lucky to have found a career that is really fun and something I really like to do. I'm a really bad musician. It's horrible to admit, like this all comes together where, you know how you watch or listen to people play and you just feel it comes from someplace inside them and they make music. Yeah, that never happens for me. I have to think about it and think about what my hands would do. And but I like being around music. And early on, I met people who were considered music important and powerful, and that really really stuck with me and really made me feel motivated. And so I started playing, guitar and bass and percussion, and wasn't particularly good at any of them. And then started mixing and found in that technology more comfortable. And through that, started to realize that that acoustics was important. I was actually, a friend was building a studio in New York City, and I was trying to help figure out why it didn't sound good. And I was literally underneath the console with a voltmeter in my hand when
Wow.
I realized that it wasn't the equipment, it was the room. And
Mm.
back in those days, seems so long ago now, in the 1980s, there wasn't a lot of good practical information. So I started making phone calls and asked who knew about acoustics, and right down the rabbit hole.
Wow,
Uh,
wow, wow.
that's really how I got started.
Mm.
I met Russell Johnson, the great concert hall designer, and ended up visiting his offices at a company called Artec, and asked, what do I have to do to get a job here? And they said, go get a master's degree. And um, I applied to grad school the next day.
Wow, wow. Isn't that something? Yeah, yeah. So you one of the I guess not recover is it recovering musicians, or just you just are you do you still try to play some now, or
I mean,
just
there are a couple of instruments over there,
okay, all
but
right.
I really don't play much anymore. I did play for a while, and never more than a hobbyist. I just
Okay, okay,
really,
okay.
I'm very realistic about my this the sad but true story is I used to play in a little pickup band, and they would pay me $1 extra if I didn't sing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wow, wow, wow. Yeah, isn't that something?
It's
So
horrible.
yeah. So what just to back up on the acoustic, so you do acoustics and audio, not audio visual, just audio sound sound system. What's the division between
Yeah,
what
that's
you do?
actually interesting because um, those two things sort of were never considered together. It was very
Mm,
interesting. Artec was an interesting company. Russell was architecturally trained, um, but focused on performing arts centers and acoustics. And the acoustics group and the theater design group really were sort of fighting it out, right?
okay.
And that happened on a lot of projects in those days where the theater design people had their ideas and the acoustic idea people had their ideas. And Russell's thought was we should fight that out in-house and present a unified theory.
Hmm.
He really, in the earlier times before, I was old enough to be involved, the 1940s, 50s, 60s, even 70s, the architects would design a room and they would say to the acousticians, do acoustics. You can
Okay.
play with some materials.
Hmm.
Russell started from a very fundamental understanding that acoustics is architecture. You
Okay.
don't do acoustics to a room, you design a room with a proper shape for its function.
Yeah.
These particularly true for non-amplified symphonic concert halls or chamber music rooms. Um,
Hmm.
but it became very apparent that every room, whether it was for unamplified music or not, was going to have a sound system
Hmm.
because people demanded voices bigger than human voices. So when the pops orchestras would play, they needed a sound system for the vocalist. And
Okay.
when modern string quartets like the Kronos String Quartet wanted to play duets with themselves or
Hmm.
multiple versions of themselves, they needed sound systems. And
Hmm.
um, more and more electronics were being integrated into those rooms. And things got even more integrated as the internet in the 90s and beyond started to suggest that every performance space was now going to become a broadcast center.
Hmm. Okay. Okay.
So there was a trending set of issues. And
Hmm.
what was interesting about sound systems was that just making things louder wasn't working, right?
Hmm.
Sound
Hmm.
was bad. People couldn't, there was bad articulation, bad intelligibility. Um, it didn't sound good very
Yeah.
often. People were disappointed. And then the some funny things happened from unusual places. The auto industry decided to make cars quiet inside, mufflers
Yeah.
and engine mounts and vibration isolation was very big in the 1960s. And in the 1970s and 80s, tremendous changes in movie theaters. And in movie theaters, someone whispers, you hear them clearly.
Right.
Right? Someone shouts, you hear them clearly.
Hmm.
Um, there's no problem with it. And so as sound got better in cars and in movies, people are saying, well, why is it not good in my sports facility or in my worship space or in my concert hall? And
Hmm.
so there was more and more pressure. And that pressure sort of made people have to think, well, wait a minute. We're approaching sound systems and acoustics independently almost, or in
Hmm.
almost every case. And the way we deal with acoustic measurement and understanding rooms and understanding sound systems had nothing to do with their interaction.
Hmm.
And I saw early on that this was a real thing that we needed as a industry, as a
Hmm.
acoustical firm,
Hmm.
acoustical community to start thinking about sound differently and
Hmm.
measure things differently and set about to build tools that were more geared toward that interaction. And
Right. Okay.
that's where smart came from.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So just to back up on, yeah, you mentioned Russ Johnson. I always hear about him when I got into this whole field of performing arts and theaters in the really I got into it in the late 1990s, 97, 98. And but that was a name that I always heard, Russ Johnson, and the projects that he had um, he had designed acoustically. So he is one of your mentors in this whole thing. Oh, there he is there. Russ Johnson and also what Don Pearson, right? So Russ Johnson is your acoustics.
Yes, my
Um,
acoustics mentor.
your mentor, yeah.
It's funny. I'm wearing jeans because I was crawling around in the attic of that. We're standing in front of the Meyerson Symphony
Yeah. Okay.
now,
Wow.
and Russell's wearing a suit because he was going to meetings. Um,
Okay.
but it's funny because I look like the crazy one there, and he looks like the normal one. Um, Russell was a incredibly strange and wonderful person, and someone I'm incredibly happy to have met. Really, uh,
Yeah.
really crazy character. I mean, really an unusual man
Right.
in just so many ways. He used to sleep on the conference room table. Um, among other things. And
Wow.
yeah, he was unique. Uh,
I heard some battles that he had between. I think I was watching a documentary on that center and some battles between he and I am
okay.
Pei. Yeah. So
Yeah, yeah. I actually had got a chance to meet IMP and work with him, and uh, I sort of played a little role in bridging that gap. Um,
okay.
Yeah, what happened was the traditional story is that we came up with a sort of concept design, uh, and before they had selected an architect, they had selected Russell and Artec to be
Mhm.
the firm, and Artec put forward a rectangular, what I call a modified rectangular room. It's a reversed fan shape where a fan shape fans out and the room gets wider as you get farther from the stage. Russell took the rectangular room, but modified it so it got narrower as you went up and back.
Mm.
The reason for that is he wanted to keep rooms narrow so that reflections from the side walls would be close to the direct sound, and it would get more sound into the front and middle of the audience as opposed to pushing it to the back wall. And that that fundamental understanding really was a big part of Russell's insight into concert hall acoustics. The second part being a coupled chamber design, a two-slope decay. And that's what I wrote my master's thesis on. Russell Russell showed this to IM Pei and in front of the press and in front of the board of directors of the symphony and Mort Meyerson and all of the powers that be. And IM Pei looked at it and he said, "This is wonderful. Now we can start to do real architecture."
Oh, that probably didn't go well.
No, it was contentious. The other thing was that acoustical consultants, I think earlier today, I said that we're the Rodney Dangerfield of the design team.
Yeah.
We're not often given a lot of respect.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think that there was some sense where the acoustical consultants would walk in, and remember, these are people who've dedicated their lives and their careers to creating better concert halls, and they're being overridden and judged or valued by architects who may or may not be interested in the sound of a room, much more interested in the
Aesthetics, yeah.
visual and the aesthetics. I have been super lucky and blessed, if you like, just incredibly gifted by the powers that be to work with people who were building rooms that acoustics was the highest priority. Wynton Marsalis at Jazz at Lincoln Center, what an amazing person. The great impresario Randall Klein at the SF Jazz Center. And even smaller projects, Nick Forrester, an incredibly gifted musician and the founder of E-Town, where we did a little hall in Boulder, Colorado, among the many other people who, studios and places where people really, sound was the primary goal. Randall Klein had a great saying. He's like, "I don't want you swinging for singles or doubles. I want to hit a home run."
Awesome. Okay.
I'd rather strike out than hit a single. If people go, "It sounds okay," we failed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that takes a lot of guts. I really do. And when it came to fighting with the architect and saying, "Look, I know you think this would look better, but that doesn't work acoustically," we run into some clashes, and having someone like Wynton or Randall or Nick say, "Nope, we're going to do this way because it's going to give us a better sounding result," and them having faith in you is a wonderful thing. It's just greatest. So
oh, sorry, go ahead.
That was it.
What? Yeah, no. One question with Russ, you were talking about the reverb chamber, and I always thought, because I've been working on these for a while, just doing the cost, but I don't see the reverb chambers anymore in the designs. Was that just something special to Russ's design?
It was and it wasn't. Here's the story. I think that the reverb chambers themselves were a brilliant idea. Unfortunately, the first one he ever did didn't work. It was poorly designed. And one of the reasons that Russ helped me go to grad school and write about couple chambers and help me to go fly around the world to listen to rooms he was working on was to, and measure them, was to sort of come up with real parameters for the design, because he knew it would work. He had an amazing ability to visualize spaces in 3 dimensions. He could draw in 3 dimensions, and he could see drawings. And that's a skill that not a lot of people have. That's an advanced architectural skill. And he would say, "But can't you see that behind that and under here, there'd be this problem?" And no,
They do that all on computer now. He was
That's
doing
right.
it as
Yeah, he's doing it. I did one of the earliest 3D models in AutoCAD ever, which they were nice enough to hang up in the gentleman's office at Autodesk. Um, there were some commands that were available through their auto lisp routines, and this goes back to AutoCAD 2 point something.
yeah, yeah.
And I was able to find out about these from people who work there, these 3D face commands and extensions. And so we did some early 3D drawings of the proposed Philadelphia, the new Academy of Music, which is now the Kimmel Center,
Yeah.
way back then. But yeah, Russell had a vision for how things would sound, and he had things for three space, and the coupled room concept worked really well for multi-purpose rooms. There are a number of them, Hamilton Place, and there's one in Colorado, and there's a few other, Kitchener, but the big
Tampa and Strat
yeah,
Center in Tampa down.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Um, uh, but the big couple chambers, the Meyerson, the Kimmel Center, the Birmingham Symphony Hall, taking up that much room to do things that you can do electronically now
Okay.
very
Yeah.
well doesn't make a lot of dollars and cents. I mean, and I think that without Russell to provide the inspiration for it, no one's really stepped up and said we should do this and continue this. And given the quality of the sound systems and the quality of reverberation systems that people are using these days, I think you can really, there are lots of ways to achieve similar goals, and people are much more open to those options now.
Yeah. I think the last one I saw was the one in Las Vegas, the Smith Center. I think they had a
No,
chamber.
that's
They didn't have a
that's it's very funny. I just opened a I just worked on the design of a jazz venue, small jazz venue called Vic's across the street from the Smith Center.
Oh, okay.
And so whenever I could, I would stop in and catch an event while I was working on this wonderful little jazz venue. It's actually on the first floor of the parking garage of the Smith Center,
Oh, wow. Okay.
called
It's
Vic.
yeah.
It's a really wonderful little venue. I think the Smith Center represents a set of compromises where you're trying to do a wide variety of events, from touring Broadway shows to symphonic performances to musical performances, amplified and lightly amplified. And what the sports community found out was when you were building stadiums for football and baseball and soccer and track and field, they weren't good for all of them.
Yeah, stuff. Yeah.
And so you ended up with people building a football stadium next to a baseball stadium. And because the experience is so much better when the venue is built to support a limited number of events. And I think that maybe, I'm hoping that those solutions will come to an end and we can build more dedicated.
You're right. And maybe smaller, I guess, more intimate.
Or with audiences outside the building.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. Especially after COVID, I guess that's something that's been more on the minds of people on how to.
It's really interesting to me. This wasn't on our agenda today, but I'll bring this up, and I think it's super important. When I was growing up and studied acoustics and listened to Russell, we cared about making the sound great for the performers and for the audience. And we spent a lot of time at Artec talking about cross-stage communication. What does it take to make a stage comfortable for a symphony hall. And what happens when you bring that 95 to 107 piece symphony down to 20 pieces, and you want to play Dumbarton Oaks,
Mm-hmm.
or you want to do string quartets, or you want to do recitals? And how do you accommodate that range of performances?
Mm-hmm.
And that's not such a simple question. And how do you make it equally compelling for the audience over that range of performance? Well,
Mm-hmm.
now we've added a new facet, which is design it for the performers and for the audience and for the production team, because they represent what happens to the sound as it goes out over, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
traditional
Good
broadcast,
point. Yeah.
webcast. And if you look at venues such as the SF Jazz Center or Jazz at Lincoln Center, you can tune in and have wonderful audio. I mean, really great sound, and beautiful video as well.
Mm-hmm.
And without modifying those stages or designing those stages to accommodate production and
Mm-hmm.
making, I don't think that would be achievable.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. I think I know I live in Tampa, and I believe they have a showing of the Metropolitan
The
Opera.
opera.
Yes, okay, yeah, so
And,
that makes
and
sense. Yeah.
I will go farther and say that when they started out, it was a little rough. I mean, and those guys work really hard. I mean, really
Mhm.
hard to make it. But there was no audio control room set
Yeah.
up. They're bringing in trucks to do that, and that becomes expensive. So now putting the audio control room at Carnegie Hall for years was an office.
Hmm.
So now, as we're designing new venues, they have audio control rooms built in and video control rooms, and
Hmm.
sound of those matters, and the ability for people in those rooms to hear, and for the live sound people and microphones to be free from strong reflections and
Hmm. Hmm.
more uniform coverage across the stage becomes very important in the design process.
Yeah, yeah. So that's Russ Johnson with your acoustics background, and you mentioned Don Pearson also is, and I don't know much about Don Pearson, but I think he was an engineer for the Grateful Dead, right?
Yes, Don started a company. He was the co-founder of a company called Ultrasound. I'm trying to share my screen here. We'll get a
Oh,
picture.
okay.
Uh, there's a little photo collage of Don Pearson, and Don Pearson, what a wonderful person. I mean,
Yeah.
I just feel so lucky to have met Don, and I I don't know that I can ever repay all the kindness he showed me. It's just,
Hmm.
you meet people in your life that just help you in every way they can, and you don't know why, and you just say thank you. It's
Yeah.
just that simple.
Yeah.
Don here is shown sitting in front of a Gamble console and Meyer HD1 speakers, and the
Wow.
Grateful Dead and the Gamble, Jim Gamble owned this console company, and the Meyer Sound Lab people all worked together for many, many years to create a sound system that was different than what other people were doing, in many, many ways unique, in that they were considered it an instrument and part of their
Hmm.
band, and they play improvisational music, and one of the hardest working crews that I've ever encountered. And I asked Don a bunch of simple questions like, why do your sound systems sound different than other people's? And what are you
Yeah.
doing to make this different? And what are you doing to control low frequencies? And we started a conversation that lasted about 35 years. And uh, I couldn't have been more fortunate to have someone hold my hand and teach
Hmm.
the practical side, because what Don had to do was get a bunch of gear out of trucks in the air in an arena or at a stadium and up and running by sound check. He didn't have a lot of time to talk about science,
Yeah.
scientific things. They had ideas. They built them and they set them up and tried them. And, 20,000 people were counting on them to not screw
Right. Right.
it.
Right.
It's a lot of pressure, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Uh, the Grateful Dead sound systems in those days had 17, 18, 19 zones of loudspeakers.
Wow.
And Don was like, one of the biggest problems is optimizing the performance of a sound system to the room, because all these different arenas had different
Yeah.
tonal balances and tonal
Mm.
imbalances and boominess and reflections and rigging capabilities. And by the time they got there, they had 45 minutes to deal with a large number of zones
Right.
of loudspeakers. And you can guesstimate some of it, but in reality, you need to work
Mm.
through it. And
Mm.
so Smart came out of Don's desire to do that and my desire to measure the rooms.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. That's one question that I had it. I was going to ask you later, but I can ask you right now. Is you developed a sound system, Smart, SMAART.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. How did you develop that, and what is that all about?
You know, um, I had moved, uh, I had moved on from Artec and had a fellowship at Bell Laboratories, and um, they were working on video teleconferencing things, and I wanted to learn some digital signal processing and some acoustic measurement things. And there was an opportunity to work with people at Bell Labs. I
Mm.
got to meet the great Manfred Schroeder, one of the giants of our industry,
Hmm.
while I was there, which was just incredible. Um,
Mm.
but Smart really just came out of a conversation that I had with a guy named Alexander Ewell Thornton. We call him Thorny, who was
Mm.
Pavarotti's sound system engineer. And one of the things about video teleconferencing that Zoom does so well is that we can talk and we don't have to worry about echoes most of the time.
Mm.
The vast majority of the time, there are no echoes.
Mm. Mm.
But when you were dealing with video conferencing, you may know it's full duplex or half duplex. One side shuts down, and then
Mm.
are you there? Are you there? Um, so uh, this ability to pull echoes out is called echo cancellation. And Thorny realized that if we could make measurements, we could do echo cancellation on monitors for
Mm.
Pavarotti, because Pavarotti liked monitors very loud. They were
Okay.
back into his monitors and degrading, excuse me, degrading the audio of his voice.
Mm.
So I realized that the things I wanted to measure about concert halls were an integral part of that process, called the impulse response. And there are lots of ways to measure impulse response, and I started studying them. And we started a little software company to see if we could build some tools so I
Oh.
could measure rooms, and
Mm.
Thorny could echo cancel Pavarotti's monitors to his microphone,
Yeah.
and Don could set up Grateful Dead sound systems, and a few other people could do specific things. Um, I thought that a dozen people, 2 dozen people would use the software, and I could
Mm.
hit them all up for a couple of grand and pay for it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
when I realized that we wouldn't need a DSP chip, that computers were getting faster, all of a sudden it became, hey, this could be a viable product.
Mm.
And I took a year, and through the advice of a very dear old friend, a woman who had spent time at Harvard Business School, and she said, if you're going to do this, write a business plan.
Mm. Okay.
I wrote a business plan, one of the hardest things I've ever done. I had an uncle who was a lawyer who read it and shredded it. I mean, I was, what does this mean? Why do you think that? Well,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
where, how do I know this is true? And, I'm on paragraph 3, and I'm literally, but when I presented it to potential investors like JBL, who I licensed it to originally, they asked all the same questions, like, how do you know this? And I was ready, and he really helped me prepare for it. So
Oh.
I was able to, and other people as well. One of the things about the acoustics community is that as adversarial and as closed as that community has been over the years, where people don't want to share their secret sauce.
Hmm.
I'm exactly the opposite. I'm like, let's share everything. Everyone should
Yeah.
share. There's
Yeah.
plenty of
Wow.
work out there. We can all get good projects, and we should
Makes
all
sense. Yeah.
push each other to be better. And
Hmm.
it's funny because we're working on a project together with an architect who is really focused on the visual aspects, but is really interested in accommodating the acoustical design.
Right.
And so things are changing. And I think that's because acoustics people are demystifying that idea that it's magic. Um,
Hmm.
I don't believe it all. I like to say it's acoustics is 95% engineering, 5% artistic sensibility.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That's actually one of my questions too, is dealing with that mix of, is it science or is it um art, the acoustics?
Yeah,
How does that work there?
yeah, it's really interesting. Here's a really good example of why I reject that premise.
Okay.
Here you go. An A, 440 hertz, right? Approximately. Some people argue 443, 440 hertz. How many musicians know the frequencies of different notes? Well, scientifically, it's pretty easy to know,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So for the frequency scale in SMART, I put a note identifier. I actually
Uh,
put a keyboard so you could see it. You
yeah.
could see the frequency and you could see the keyboard and you could read the note. Uh,
Hmm.
I don't think they have to be so divergent. Um, there are musicians who know their frequencies and understand reverberation and decays incredibly well. Um, uh, there are musicians who don't care. They care about music. Um, if you can't talk about sound in a musical way, why are you designing musical spaces?
Mm.
Because ultimately, the musicality is a subjective issue, but most people will, when you do good, better, best, will
Hmm.
always get it right.
Okay.
People don't go to Carnegie Hall and go, this is great because it's Carnegie Hall. They go
Hmm.
there because it's great,
Hmm.
until you do an over amplified show and it's not great. And everyone goes, what the hell happened? And they go, oh, this hall's meant for unamplified classical music. And over the years, they've learned how to do better and better amplified shows there. And that comes from having tools that allow you to measure things and optimize the interaction between a sound system and a room, and modify the room or the sound system so that you get a good result.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting. Just to you mentioned some of the projects that you've worked on. You have quite the resume. I was looking at some of the projects that you've designed. Mentioned some of them. Um, do you have you have a few that you can share with us? Some
Sure.
projects you can talk about? Yeah.
I have a lot of, I pulled some photos together here for you. I wanted to, what happened to my, are you gonna have to give me just a second to get back to there? Um,
Of course.
I, the building arts, there we go. And, um, yeah, let's start with, Jazz at Lincoln Center. How's that?
Yeah.
Uh,
Perfect.
I think that would be super fun. We can just run through some pictures.
Yeah, I haven't been there. I love that view when they're looking out over, as Columbus Circle, isn't it?
Yes, that started out as a lobby. Um,
Oh, okay.
yeah, really, really interesting that was a lobby. Um, so I thought I would show you some pictures that maybe you haven't seen before.
Mm.
Um, this is Rose
The,
Hall,
the Rose, yeah.
named after
Okay.
the Rose family, and it's 1,200 seats. And this is the formal concert hall, and it's completely isolated from the subway below. It actually floats on springs, which
Mm.
is pretty wonderful.
Yeah.
These are a lighting element that Raphael Vignoli, the architect, showed to Winton, and Winton fell in love with, and I'll never forgive them because they drive me nuts. But one of the great thrills for me is when people I know get to play in these rooms. This is the slide trumpet master musician Steve Bernstein playing at Jazz at Lincoln Center. And this is showing some of the lighting effects that they do there. And there's Steve and his band with Henry Butler and the Hot Nine.
Hmm.
This is a picture of some part of the jazz club, Dizzy's. It's called Dizzy's Club at Jazz at Lincoln Center.
Hmm.
About 170 people, and these panels ever so slightly tilt back to reflect sound up. And we built a false fabric ceiling with a lot of diffusion above it so that the room would feel more intimate. And this is a glass wall overlooking Central Park, and more of the glass wall and more of the fancy tablets. And this is Rose Hall in action with the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra playing. And these are Aircasters that can move, and these people are sitting on a lift that can come up and be a 4-stage extension or drop and be an orchestra pit. And David Robinson, the sound mixer for the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra, fought long and hard to keep the sound position in the middle, right where valuable seats go, and I'm glad he did. You'll notice very few people sitting under the balcony, and beautiful sight lines. And this was done as a collaboration with Russell Johnson, and wonderful, wonderful space. This is looking back at the back of the room, and these are the spring isolators made of steel plates and neoprene. I didn't design these with what they call a bumper that keeps. So this is the concert hall above us. That's the slab, and these columns go down into the subway. Wilson Earring was the engineering firm that designed those. It's a very specialty field. This is Doug Wieselman and Steve Bernstein and myself, and a member of the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra. This is the slanted glass wall. What was the Allen Room is now the Appel Room under construction. And I would drag Winton in to play. He would call me regularly, "Hey man, is this gonna work?" I'm like,
yeah.
That's all gonna work. "Hey man, is that glass wall gonna work?" And I'm like, "Yeah, the glass wall is gonna work." And I was scared that it would be over. But another great picture of him. And
how was it working with him, by the way?
Probably the most inspirational thing I've ever done. The guy is insanely workaholic. I mean, I've been accused of not having much of a life outside of my work, but I'm nothing compared to that. This guy's just, he's always composing, he's always listening, he's interested in what other people are doing. He gets yelled at for being this, that, or the other thing, often things that are diametrically opposed. He gets accused of both sides of them in the same day. He's a lightning magnet for this. And I got to tell you, he takes it all and just plays. And if you've ever seen him in front of the children's concerts and the family events, it's nothing short of inspirational. And when I listen to his compositions, I'm just amazed. I don't know what else to say.
I guess with me growing up too, that he was the first like celebrity jazz person that I knew of. You know, I didn't know a lot about jazz, but when I was growing up, everyone knew about Wynton Marsalis. So yeah, that was great.
Here is a drawing. I put this up for you so you'd appreciate it. And this is Rose Hall. And what most people don't realize is that this is the proscenium. These are the towers that you saw that I said were on Aircasters that
Yeah.
on the arch here. So it has a full fly tower.
Oh, okay. Wow.
There's,
Okay. Yeah.
there's an interesting story about that, which I'm not sure I'm supposed to tell, but I'm going to tell it anyway.
All right.
The fly tower was insisted upon by Rudy Giuliani. And
Hmm.
my understanding was, I could be wrong, but my understanding from the people involved was that Rudy wasn't sure that Winton could raise enough money to build this. So
Hmm.
if he failed, there's been a desire to have a mini Met, a smaller opera house. And so he wanted to make sure that they had a full fly tower here. So there's a full fly tower at the back of Rose Hall. This is the Allen Room, which is now called the Appel Room, and area number 2 is the Jazz Hall of Fame, which
Hmm.
is Ahmet Erdogan, and named for his brother. And this
Hmm.
is a little 600-seat room with the glass wall
Oh,
overlooking
okay.
on the circle.
That's it.
Call this area Times Square. This is the Dizzy's Club, with the
Hmm.
glass wall overlooking Central Park. This is the recording studio complex and technical control center. And then there are dressing rooms and backstage rooms
Hmm.
for the performers. So Jazz at Lincoln Center was a significantly complex building
Hmm.
in a tower, and it was quite an
Hmm.
event, quite a thing to be part of. And just when I say I designed, I don't want to even begin to try and take credit for that.
Hmm.
It was an um, incredible team of people,
Yeah.
uh,
Hmm.
involved. The
Yeah. Yeah.
architects at Raphael Vignoli's office and the
Hmm.
Turner Construction and just the folks at Jazz at Lincoln Center. But without question, this was run by Winton and
Hmm.
uh, his energy. I'll show you a much smaller project next. How's
Okay.
that? That's a low res picture. This is
Hmm.
a 220 seat venue and broadcast facility called E-Town Hall in Boulder, Colorado. And
Hmm.
here's a picture from the outside.
Okay.
The front of this is new. The original church didn't have this front.
Hmm.
Added that, and I'm going to see if I can get uh, well, I don't see a lot of pictures of the
Oh, it's
actual
a converted church. They converted
converted
that
church.
into, okay.
And it had been converted and it had been built. It was on 8 different levels. So building this was
8.
more than slightly problematic.
Okay.
This is the recording studio downstairs.
Hmm.
It's a very simple, wonderful room. I like to slant glass upward to the ceiling where we have um, lots of treatment. Um,
Hmm.
have very complicated isolation because one of the early decisions that we had to make was, would the studio and the venue be used simultaneously because they shared a common wall. So
Okay.
we had to completely isolate both, and we did. We also had to take um, uh, uh, we had to take uh, the main floor of the venue out because it wasn't structurally sound. And
Hmm.
just those
Okay.
2 decisions added about 20% to the project. So,
Yeah.
right, to
Go
give
about
you
the
a
cost. Yeah.
sense of scale, Jazz at Lincoln Center, which was given the space by the city, um, it was $180 million originally. This
Hmm.
project all in was under 10 million.
Oh,
So
wow. Wow.
you get a
Yeah.
sense. There's a
Yeah. Yeah.
picture of Nick Forrester and myself and
Hmm.
Bob Weir, who's uh, actually played perhaps the smallest ticketed show he's done in 40 years in a 220 seat room.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
that was kind of fun
Would,
for.
would you consider those rooms box and box? That
Um,
is that
Yeah, the studio is box and box.
Okay.
The concert venue is partially boxed. It's partially isolated.
Okay.
We didn't do a full box and box for the ceiling.
Mm,
We built boxes for the side walls. Box and box just means that there's no rigid connection between the inner walls and the outer walls. There's two sets
mm.
of walls. But the studio is completely boxed in box. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Now, a question for you, because you worked on, the buildings or the rooms, and you also worked on the smaller recording studios.
Yes.
Which one is your first love, so to speak, or are they all your first love?
Yeah, I don't really have I like them all. I know that
Okay.
sounds big, but I'll tell you why. Um I love I really love working on spaces where people I know can play. I'm so excited um uh to hear at Carnegie Hall. I'm going to hear Bella Fleck play with Bruce Hornsby and Anat Cohen and a number of Zakir Hussain in May. They're going to play Rhapsody in Blue and then a bunch of Bella's compositions, and with Sierra Hull and Brian Rast. And uh, even if I'm not close friends with these people, I know a number of them
Hmm.
enough to say hi, and uh, I'm looking forward to reconnecting with some of them. But I love sharing the experience of listening to music in great sounding spaces with people I like and friends. We have a group, I think we're up to 30 people going to this show
Oh,
together.
wow. Oh, that should be
So
fun.
if you all want to join us at Carnegie Hall on May 4th,
Yeah.
but I think that working on the studios is particularly fun because the people who own and work in studios tend to really care about music a lot. And
Okay.
I have two examples for you of
Yeah.
one. This is a studio called Tonal Park. This is in Tacoma Park, Maryland. And let me share the screen again. And here you go. You got it? Do you
Oh,
have that?
yeah. That's
Right.
nice.
So this is an extension. This is a room that has two purposes. It's the recording, it's the live room for musicians to be playing in. These panels are called acoustical diffusers, and you'll notice
Mm.
that there are many types of them, and they're all over the sidewalls, and one here, and they're around the column we had to encase. And these are acoustical soffits, which we do a great deal of. There's no chipboard here. It's just fabric over a frame with
Oh,
acoustical
wow.
materials
Okay.
inside. And this ceiling is suspended by these sidewalls, which are supported by an isolated floor. So this is
Mm.
complete box in box, and there's no
Mm.
connection to the structure above. What's really interesting about this is it's the most complicated ceiling we've ever built.
Mm.
This is what the room looks like when a band came in to do a little performance, and they set up chairs and people can come in and hear the performance. And this is one of the mastering rooms. I love this room. It's one of my favorite places to listen to music. And not that we were happy with, this is the open night party with the engineer, Charlie Pilzer, who owns the place. And we decided to
Yeah.
do a dance.
It was fun. Yeah.
Yeah, try to celebrate the
Yeah.
successes in our lives. But so I enjoy working on studios. They present a number of challenges, and we've come up with a number of unique solutions. The soffits that I mentioned have been used by lots of other people, but we've been doing asymmetric rear corners of all
Mm.
things, which come out of a mathematical study of low frequencies in small rooms. And we've presented that at some of our scientific gatherings, and it's just now becoming more popular. A young French acoustician named Christian Carvin did some beautiful modeling work to help me, and we presented that together at the NAMM show a couple years back. And it's been extremely well received, and we're building lots of rooms with those
Mm.
features. things are very successful on that front.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I don't want to hold you too long, but so I just have just a couple more questions for you. But one of the segments in my interviews, I always say, "Ask the expert." So you're the expert, and so I have a question for you to clarify, and maybe we can learn something from you here. So, what is the purpose of an acoustic canopy? I've seen
Right.
different types of acoustic canopy, glass acoustic
Yes.
canopies, and so what is it, and which type of halls or rooms require them? Uh,
Great.
just a little bit
Great.
about those.
I didn't put together pictures of different acoustical canopies, but I have them in a presentation. So if you'd like
Okay.
to uh, insert here.
Yeah, definitely.
Uh,
I like
in
this.
large concert halls, canopies help the orchestra hear each other and help project sound into the audience. In smaller rooms where the stage volume is a big part of what the audience hears, like the SF Jazz Center,
Mhm.
I think I can do this super quickly here. I don't know why this is closed. Q5 and SF Jazz. Yes, I have some canopy pictures for you. In a room like this, in an 800 seat room, you get a canopy is intended to show the audience, and I just have to I have to find the share button again. There it is. Share, and let's go to this one. And uh,
Oh, yeah.
right.
Mhm.
So this is an acoustical canopy above the stage area at the SF Jazz Center under construction. And
Mhm.
this is fabric covered, and you can see there's a little hole there. If you look at that from the top, um,
Mhm.
these are acoustical diffusers, and they're going in two directions because back when I did this, two-dimensional diffusers that scatter sound horizontally and vertically weren't as common. So to get that effect, we just rotated them 90 degrees every so many feet.
Mhm.
And you get a sense of scale by the guy walking on top of it.
Yeah.
This canopy is never going to fall down because in an earthquake zone like San Francisco, the amount of steel that's required to hold this up is
Yeah.
astronomical. Um, but again, the idea is for musicians playing here, the sound goes up and gets scattered uniformly across the stage. We also have those same diffusers behind the stage and on the upstage wall. And the idea for that is that the music and the sound uh, doesn't reflect strongly because it's not trying to do strong reflections like you would in a symphonic concert hall. It's
Mhm.
trying to scatter and diffuse the sound so microphones don't see those strong reflections.
Mhm.
Similarly, this is the glass wall, or where the glass wall would be at Jazz at Lincoln Center, um, overlooking Central Park. This is called the Appel Room now, and uh, we're back at Jazz at Lincoln Center, and you can see the acoustical canopy,
Mhm.
the sound system, the side fills. There's a subwoofer array up here and some front
Mhm.
fill, but the canopy makes the pianist and the drummer and whoever else is playing here
Mhm.
hear each other and does a little bit of projecting into the audience. So the idea of a canopy really depends on what the purpose of the room is. And
Mhm.
in recording studios, we use canopies to provide low frequency absorption above the mixing console.
Okay. Okay. So it's the usage of it. It could be some absorptive, some diffusive, reflective,
Exactly.
feeling. Okay.
It really depends on
On the
the
room.
this is the Joe Henderson lab, and I just wanted to show this because between the Allen room with its glass wall and
Mhm.
this room with two glass walls,
Yeah.
we've had to lay to rest that you can't build a great sounding room with glass walls.
Yeah.
And
All right.
You have to hide treatment in the ceiling, which you can sort of see up here with this
Hmm.
grid and hidden behind these slats and with slanted glass and all sorts of crazy other ideas. But this is a wonderful place to hear smaller performance. I think they cap it at about 75
Oh, okay.
attendees.
Well, yeah, yeah. I've seen on the acoustical canopy. I think it's Carmel, Indiana, the Palladium. They had a glass,
Yes.
I believe it's a glass canopy there. So I didn't
But,
know if more architectural or does it matter with the
it's meant to be
material?
acoustical, that they're trying to
Mm-hmm.
do the same thing and they're trying
Mm-hmm.
not to shut out light. We did glass. Russell did a canopy in Avery Fisher Hall before it got renovated
Mm-hmm.
um, as a sort of temporary stopgap measure to help energy on stage a bit. Yeah, the use of canopies really depends on the design of the hall. The use of lots of islands of canopies,
Mm-hmm.
like were done in San Francisco years ago. Um, Not my favorite design element. I have lots of reasons for that. But I think that, again, as the need for more diffusion on stage and better uniform sound for production purposes is a design goal. We're going to see canopies changing dramatically
Mm-hmm.
over the next generation of halls.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, speaking on that, another question, speaking on the next generation, you've learned a lot of your experience over the years, and you speak of your mentors with Don and Russ. Uh, I'm sure now you're a mentor, or how do you pass that information on to the next generation so you have that you learn from
You
uh,
know,
your
it's
knowledge?
really it's a great time. I met Russell Johnson because a friend of mine knew someone who knew a sound guy who knew someone selling acoustical measurement gear who told me about our tech. And I just
Mm-hmm.
literally called them and said, can I come by? Um,
Mm-hmm.
it was a little nutty. Now, the internet, YouTube, books, there's so much good information, too much information out there. There's a lot of good information out there, but I'm not sure it represents a high percentage of the information out there. Um, I decided to start a group, um, maybe 50, 60 people, 70 people. I invited a little Facebook, you know, group to talk about acoustical construction details.
Mm-hmm.
And my thought was we could all help each other and we could have a sort of repository for ideas and
Mm-hmm.
about what's more practical or less practical or needs to happen or doesn't need to happen. And it kind of grew and grew.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this past month, we added our 50,000th member.
Wow. So it grew from just a little small think tank.
A
Now it's
little small thing. It's a little out of hand. It, Fortunately, what happens in these groups is that um, people sort of self-moderate, and someone will bring up a topic and they'll moderate the responses and keep the conversation going. And I'm not in love with the format, and it's not, but it's free and so many interesting people say, "Why are you on Facebook?" And I'm like, the great engineer producer Al Schmidt would send me a text on Facebook every once in a while, and I'm like, I'm never closing this account.
Right, right.
So I'm not comfortable calling Al Schmidt on the phone, and if he
Right,
wants to
right.
reach out to me, and there's an easy way for him to do it, I'm going to.
Yeah, the
And
internet. Oh man. Yeah.
so,
Facebook.
in fact, I mentioned working on a paper with Christian Carvin. That's how I met him, was through this group. So
Mm.
it's been a really nice thing for the few times that there are hassles with people being rude or whatever. We just shut it down. I mean, I just,
Okay.
um, but I'm a big believer in free speech and people's right to say, I think that's a crappy idea. Just have a good reason why. you know.
Right,
Uh,
right, right.
the rule in SIA Acoustics is we do it my way until you convince me that your way is better, and then that becomes my way. Um,
Yeah.
so I want everyone to explore, and we have a young man named Tyler Cottrell, and I think he really enjoys going, Sam, you're wrong about this. The better way
Mm,
is X.
mm.
And when he says that, if I have time, I'll go, no, 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 you're wrong, knowing that he's going to convince me he's right. Or
Yeah,
go, okay, you're right. And I think he gets disappointed when he doesn't get to argue it out.
yeah, yeah.
I love the fact that he's trying to find the best solutions for our clients in terms of um, cost and effectiveness. And so
Mm,
that type of debate, that type of
mm.
discussion, I think really moves the whole field forward. And I really like that.
I guess it's debate. It's not debate for debate's sake, but it's debate to move, like you say, is to get better, to get the best
Yeah,
product. So, yeah.
I don't, I'm not interested in debating something that's doesn't have any, if it doesn't
Mm.
save cost or
Right,
provide
right,
better performance, why are we talking about it?
right. Exactly, exactly.
It's like, it's there's a good example with the isolators from Jazz at Lincoln Center. Like, that's really expensive. And
Mm,
at Zankel Hall under Carnegie, they didn't isolate
mm,
because isolating a basement and the amount of space they had made it much, much harder. And you hear the subway. And
mm,
does it hurt a performance? I don't know. I've heard it
mm.
hurt performances and I've heard it help performances.
Oh
Like
well.
when the Kronos String Quartet all changed the key they were playing in and went to the note of the subway rumble. It was the whole audience was like,
Oh wow.
wow.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
you
perfect
know,
time. Yeah.
I loved it. So that's debatable, but it wasn't feasible at the time to try and isolate that space.
Mm,
I think that you have to make decisions that are sometimes less than ideal, and you live with them, or you inform the client, hey, this is a bad idea for XYZ reason. But again, and this from our project together, and I'm working with the same architects on 3 other projects.
mm.
We had a meeting just before you and I started talking, where they're really making every effort to accommodate our acoustical concerns. And I can't tell you how much I value that and appreciate them and really try to bend as far as I can to help them achieve their goals,
Mm.
because they're really bending as far as they can to help us achieve our goals, because
Right.
they believe that it needs to look great and it needs to sound great.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
if nothing else, that was much rarer 40 years ago than it is today.
Wow, wow, wow. Is the field progressing as far as is it getting better now?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Hmm.
the tools are so much better.
Hmm.
Um, you know, I won't talk, I don't usually talk about this in this type of setting, but I'm a cancer survivor.
Oh,
And
awesome.
uh, today marks the anniversary of 5 years I'm cancer free.
Oh, congratulations. Wow.
Yes, I'm thrilled. I
Mm,
couldn't be happier.
mm.
It's go team.
Yeah.
And the reason I mention that is my cancer doctors keep telling me that in 20 years, we're going to look back at chemotherapy and think it's barbaric.
Mm.
These are the doctors who are practicing and prescribing chemotherapy today.
Wow.
I fortunately was uh, treated with immunotherapy, chemotherapy,
Mm.
and immunotherapy, where they put in diseases in your body that cause your immune system to fight things, including cancer.
Mm.
It's an amazing development, and they're like, it's just a matter of time, because the great tools that we have
Hmm.
now that we didn't have 20 years ago. And the same thing, I think SMART is one of the tools, it came out in the mid 90s, and it's, perhaps the most used tool worldwide today.
Mm.
But
Wow.
um, there are lots of other tools out there that have equal validity and value.
Mhm.
You can start seeing things, and as people now are exploring immersive audio and spatialization and the ability to hear in 3 space and create um, sound that flies
Mhm.
around, the interest in waveform synthesis, which is what's used at Pure 17, a venue that we designed here in New York, or at the Sphere with the holoplot system.
Mhm.
The Pure, I should say, Pure 17 is an EAW Anya system. Those systems allow you to control not just the vertical, but the horizontal and vertical sound field,
Mhm.
and put sound where you want it and not where you want it, and do other things like make it appear that it's coming from here or there,
Oh,
or
wow. Like,
and
yeah.
yeah, so we're entering a new era, and there'll be a next generation of tools, and I think that things can only get better. And I think
Mhm.
people, audiences are more demanding.
Yeah.
Just like when cars got better and movie theaters get better, now with everyone starting to listen to Atmos home theaters, you're seeing a demand for live sound. That's we'll see. I know Mark Knopfler from Dire Straits did a tour I heard where he was doing surround sound in venues, and it was astoundingly good. And I heard
Wow.
another band try it, and it was astoundingly bad. So I think it's going to take. I think it's going to take some time and some uh, ups and downs, but I think we're headed strongly in the right direction.
I guess that's the need for people wanting to be immersed in the whole, but I guess that's the immersive sound there. You know.
As we come to the end, I think that I'd like to say one thing, that I don't believe in magic in engineering. I believe there's
Mhm.
elegance in engineering.
Mhm.
There's insight, and there's um, uh, cleverness, and there's uh, everything but magic.
Yeah.
But I believe there's magic in music, both in
Mhm.
its performance and in listening to it. And I believe that, I really believe that when uh, the performer feels that they're hearing each other, the performers hear each other well, and the room is responding well, and they're feeling the audience, and the audience is feeling that interaction on stage, that it just builds into something that can only be described as magical. And that's why I like to build these places.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. Well, my last question for you is, this has been great here. You've won the Audio Innovator Award, the Pernelli Award.
Yeah, that was
And
crazy.
awesome, awesome. And you've had many achievements. But what is the most gratifying thing that you've accomplished over your life and career?
I like the work that I do. I like the
Yeah.
people I work with. Um, uh, SIA Acoustics became part of Robert Director Associates. So I'm working with a larger team with more resources, and that's been interesting and fun and good for us. I think that building rooms where my friend, the great mastering engineer, Dave Glasser at Airshow Mastering, I said, hey, I have this great idea for a room. You want to build a room with asymmetric rear corners? And he looked at me like I was out of my mind and said, is it going to work? And I said, I think so. And he said, all right, let's do it. And so having that room work and having him do Grammy Award winning work in that room and mastering music that I really care about and enjoy. Um, that's a great feeling. Hearing Wynton play Jazz at Lincoln Center is wonderful. Going and hearing the music at the SF Jazz Center is spectacular. I love going to E Town Hall and hearing. I don't even care what it is. I just like hearing music there because the whole organization is something I believe in. So I feel very lucky that I'm able to work with people who I like and respect, and um, help them create music and in spaces that they like. And that's super fun for me.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, Sam, I really enjoyed this time with you. I really appreciate it. Learned a lot. I always take the time to try to speak with a lot of people in the field, just to help me understand it more and learn. And you're one of those people, so I'm really grateful for it. So
And
what's the best way that people can get in contact with you, by the way,
before I give my contact information, I'm going to make some horrible statement about how people who price out these venues should become much more familiar with acoustical material cost and sort of drop.
Oh,
That's just for
don't
you.
shoot the messenger, right? We
You can,
just
you
tell
can,
you.
you can edit that out if you like. Probably the easiest way to get in touch with me is my email. You can put it up on the screen if you want to do that. sberkow@sia.director.com. Director is spelled DE. It'll be on the screen.
Yeah, I'll put it.
There's the Facebook group, Acoustical Construction Details and Discussion. I gave it the geekiest name I possibly could so that no one would join.
Right. 50,000 people later.
The crazy thing about it is that the numbers, and I can, if you want to put a graph up, I can show you. Since January 1st of this year, 39,000 individual people have read the thread, have logged in. So 50,000 people joined. Some people leave Facebook, some people pass away, some people, whatever, aren't interested in this topic for whatever reason. But the level of participation is amazing. And I really do try to answer as many questions as I can. I try to put, a half an hour a day to just answer people's questions on there. And I'm not always able to do it, but I usually try. So I'm pretty easy to find.
Awesome. Well, Sam, again, thank you. I appreciate your time and I hope to speak with you soon.
Good. Great pleasure. And by the way, I went back and went through a few of your talks, and I thought they were really very interesting. So I hope people find this one to be fun.
I appreciate it. I enjoyed it myself, so I'm sure they will.
Goodbye, everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye. If you've enjoyed this video and would like to see others like it, please visit my YouTube channel at Nakoto Building Arts. And while you're there, remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.